Oh, okay, I've got one other thing to say as well. Okay. So Peter, I thought you were going to do it.
You said you had one more thing to say, and apparently I'm saying it.
After this, I meant, okay.
Oh.
I've got something to say, so go on, Matt.
Bloody muppet. This is a spoiler-free review, and our spoiler-filled review will be coming up in the next few days to give you time to go watch it, and then please come back and hear our thoughts on it.
Okay, so we just got out of seeing it. Went to the earliest available one. What do you think?
Really good. Whether or not it lives up to the hype that most people are saying it's probably the best Spider-Man film of all time, it's up there, but I wouldn't say it's the best. No. It definitely has its flaws, but it's got a lot of pros as well. I'd say the main good thing coming from this film is probably the performances from Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland. And you get some classic Samuel L. Jackson moments in there as well.
It's hard to compare to Homecoming because it has more flaws, but it also reaches greater heights.
It kind of follows some of the same character developments as Homecoming does. It's all about Peter Parker growing up, basically, and assuming the mantle that's been left over to him. What do you think about Jake Gyllenhaal in this film?
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Like...
We got a good Mysterio.
An awesome Mysterio.
He's definitely a mentor figure in this film, along with Happy Hogan as well. Endgame spoiler. I think now that Tony Stark is out of the picture, Peter Parker needs those grown-up figures to like look up to and strive to be as good as. And I feel like that was the role of these two characters between them.
I think as well, something else that Mysterio provides is, like for anyone who doesn't, if you don't know anything about Mysterio, we won't give too much away, but he basically is like the master of illusions. And so there's some really kind of creative fight sequences.
Yeah.
Where you kind of, you know the bit in Infinity War where Thanos is like playing with the idea of reality and Star-Lord goes to shoot the gun and bubbles come out instead of bullets. Like there's a lot of moments like that. Like there's entire scenes, like fight sequences like that where you just don't know what's real and what's not and what's going on. And so that kind of allows for some new action that we haven't seen before.
He's almost a bit like Doctor Strange, like even to the point where, as shown in the trailer, he's almost using like green energy blasts instead of Doctor Strange's orange. The comedy worked to an extent. I feel like some of the jokes might have gone into overkill.
Yeah.
Like without saying anything too spoilery, Ned's whole arc in this film starts off as like a funny gag, and then I feel like at points it kind of goes off the deep end. But you can understand why they did it the way they did it.
Yeah, his whole storyline is basically just a running gag, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it never helps. Like, I always think how funny you find a film kind of depends on the cinema experience that you have. So, like, for us, like, there was a good amount of people in there, but it wasn't absolutely packed and people weren't, like, rolling laughing.
It was a small cinema, to be fair.
It was a small room, yeah, because obviously this is the first show they're doing, so I think most people will go see it tomorrow. But, like, there were a lot of jokes which you could hear the odd chuckle here and there, but it didn't have the cinema, like, fucking dying laughing. Can we talk about Martin Starr for a minute, the teacher?
Yeah.
So I've loved him since Freaks and Geeks. He's one of my favourite. He's one of the most underrated actors, I'd say. And I'm so glad that he got more to do in this one. Like, he has some really funny bits.
They definitely build upon his character from the little tidbits you see in Homecoming.
The other teacher, played by J.B. Smoove, completely pointless. There's no need for him to be in this film.
He was one of those comedic elements that just didn't work for me. Like, he was meant to be that kind of...
He's not even the comic relief, though, because every character is kind of the comic relief in this film.
Yeah, you almost see him as, like, he should be there to counterbalance the first teacher, but he's the same, but worse.
Yeah, like if they had...
He's not as effective in his role.
No, if they were, like, a kind of double act and they had, like, different clashing personalities, then I could see why they would do it, but he basically makes the same kind of jokes that Martin Starr makes, but just with worse comedic timing, and he just doesn't really need to be there.
But besides that, Tom Holland does another great portrayal of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It almost feels like it's retreading old ground at points. Like, you'd think lessons he learned from Homecoming would carry on into this film, but he kind of still needs to learn how to grow and, like, accept responsibility, ironically.
I think the thing with Spider-Man is he's always fighting a battle that is too big for him. And that's the point.
Yeah, and he's a teenager as well, so you understand why sometimes he can't understand, like, how he's meant to be able to do all these things and overcome all these obstacles,
Yeah.
especially with his limitations, despite him having superpowers.
Yeah, he's always in over his head, isn't he? Which and it's like what that leads to as well is I always forget what a good actor he can be. Like there's that one scene in Homecoming where he's buried in the rubble, and
Screaming for help.
yeah, that bit that nearly gets me teary and gets the knot in the throat. Like that's such good acting, and the other similar scene in this one.
The battles with the elementals, like the action scenes in general, were really well done in this. You can tell that they've come in leaps and bounds to improve upon the cinematography and the special effects on these Marvel films.
Yeah.
This is a Spider-Man film that has similarities to previous ones, but when it comes to the big battles and stuff like that, it's definitely on its own perch. We haven't seen some of the action sequences like we saw in this film.
No.
And in the MCU, probably as a whole. It's different in that regard. You can tell that they're trying to move away from what we've seen in older films and continue to evolve it and update it. And that just, if anything, makes me excited to see what's coming in later movies in the MCU.
One of my gripes with Homecoming was that I left thinking that the action was quite underwhelming, but John Watts has clearly got better.
Well, he's taken the lessons he's learned from the first one and little gripes people may have had. And he definitely seems more he's been more comfortable in creating this film.
Yeah, it definitely does. Speaking of the CGI though, one thing that I find to be true with a lot of Marvel films is the big stuff they do really well, but the little stuff just gets glossed over. There was one bit where Spider-Man, he just does a flip. Not in the air, he just does a flip and lands on a roof. And it looked terrible. But then all these big CGI monsters and Mysterio and stuff looks amazing. And you're if you can do all the big stuff, just make sure you do the little stuff as well. So there was a couple of little questionable moments of CGI, but the stuff that matters, the big fight scenes and the villains, that was all pretty much flawless. The water monster in particular, I can't imagine how hard that must be to animate. And they did a really good job of that.
There are some conveniences in the film where I did find myself saying, well, of course that happened, because how else would the narrative continue?
Yeah, I thought that about one particularly as well.
So, but, it's nothing we haven't seen in Marvel before, and it's almost guaranteed at this point that, coincidental events help carry on the narrative.
Something that I really liked about this film as well was it almost brought the magic back to web slinging for me a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean? Those Raimi films, when you see him swinging through the city and you get that pure magic of oh, how amazing would that be?
The newer films are much better at showing how creative Spider-Man can be with his webbing abilities.
There was also a really interesting way of shooting some of the action sequences where usually it would be in a wide and you kind of see him swinging about doing his thing, but it was almost like there was a camera kind of attached just a foot away from him. The whole time, he'd be swinging and you'd swing the exact same. Do you know what I mean?
Just a bunch of tracking shots, wasn't it? In a way.
Yeah, but it was I don't know. It was just done in a way that I hadn't seen in a Spider-Man film before. Real up close kind of angles where you move with him, and can't get into it because it's a spoiler. But there's a cameo in this film that's just. It was my favourite part of the movie. It made me so happy. Look at this. Look at that. That's a real grin. Literally. Recreate the face that I made to you in the cinema when that happened. That is literally what I did. I was sat there. Do you know what? I was so happy for the cameo that I actually I forgot to listen to what the person was saying.
A lot of this film does focus on the high school element of it. I mean, it is a school trip, essentially. That's how this all begins. So it focuses a lot on his relationships with his classmates, particularly Ned, and the main focus point is probably his relationship with MJ.
Yeah.
And you see that little bubbling high school romance going down.
It felt quite real to me as well, that romance.
Yeah, they definitely work really well off one another.
For me, what it was is, that feeling when you're in high school and you like someone and you think they might like you back, but you're not really sure, but you're too scared to say something, but you want to say something.
Yeah, and it plays off those vibes, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of films try and do that, and I think it's quite hard to get it right. But for me, I don't know, something about it just really worked for me. It just reminded me of being in that exact same headspace.
Yeah.
So that worked really well for me. In general, I would say that the scores of the new Spider-Man movies aren't that memorable, but there was a score during the credits, which is my favourite Spider-Man score that I've heard in recent, probably since Danny Elfman's like original ones in the Sam Raimi films. But in the credits, there was a really good score that I liked. It's got like a high-pitched, like fast kind of like, I don't even know what instrument it is.
There are also 2 post-credit scenes in this film. One mid-credit, one at the end. I'd say stick around for both because they almost have real ramifications for Phase 4 of the MCU.
I just wanted to talk about the suit quickly because the new suit, the red and black one, that looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fresh. I like that. But the noir suit, while I thought it looked cool in the trailer, I was like, how are they gonna put that in without shoehorning it? But there's a really good story-based reason for him to have that suit.
Yeah.
And I liked it.
It looks pretty legit as well. Like, I prefer the red and black one by far.
Yeah, I do. That's my favourite one. I prefer that over the red and blue one.
But they even like incorporate it into the story, like the red and black one, I should say. Like, there's a reason it looks better.
It's a small thing, but I liked the origin of Mysterio's name. I liked how they came up with it.
Yeah.
I thought that was
because it's almost a tongue-in-cheek thing, like, oh yeah, the name Mysterio, where would that come about? Like, why would he call himself that? And then I thought it was a quite clever way of doing it. Probably the toughest review we've had to do.
Out of all 4.
Because there's a lot of spoilery things in this film.
Yeah.
I think we should also say, what would you rate this out of 10? I'd say a good, 7.58 out of 10. In that range for me.
I think so much of this film relies on Mysterio. And thankfully, he is really, really awesome. Mm. But beyond that, there are some flaws and some things that don't quite work.
Yeah, some of the running gags extend their welcome a bit too much.
Yeah, I'd probably give it 7.5 as well. Yeah, well, we'll do our spoiler review. We'll probably put up in about a week.
Yeah, in about a week.
So stick around for that. We've got a review of Midsummer coming in a few days.
Yeah, and there we have it. Thanks again for watching, guys. Leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. We will be back very shortly. But with that being said, I'm Matt.
I'm Dan.
That was Cheesy, and this is the end of the video.
Go, let's go! That was cheesy.